then transition into what we talked earlier.
Yeah, so his question is, in the URL, he also put his last name. And so now, if you actually search for that, obviously, it comes up because it's a unique combination, a last name and an industry, right? So in the short run, yep, that probably works. But remember that most people who find us on the web, for example, don't put McClellan Marketing Group in the search, because if they did that, they could just call us, right? They put Des Moines Advertising Agency or Iowa Marketing Firm or something like that. So it's great to show up well when your name is in the search, but remember, if they haven't heard of you, that's not how they're going to search, okay? Another question. At some point, it may sound like I'm hacking up a lung because I have a little bit of walking pneumonia left, but I'm fine. And I am not contagious. Yes?
Yeah, Drew, best uses of LinkedIn. What would be your maybe top 2 or 3 besides typically what you see is people connecting with people, but it gets a little tiring. So what would you recommend to say, this is the best use of it?
So the question is best use of LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is probably one of the social media tools that is underutilized more than most, and I think it's because it's not very sexy. You can't put pictures of your kids. You can't, it's just not as interactive. It feels like a big old Rolodex. The beautiful thing about it are a couple things. One, I think one of the places where it is often not used well is the question and answer area. So one of the places where you can build great SEO and you can demonstrate your expertise is to every once in a while scan the Q&A section for questions that are related to your industry and answer them. Now this assumes a couple things. One, you know what you're talking about. Two, you can write without typos, right? I mean, so you're putting yourself out there. You have to have some basics in terms of how you're going to do that, but that's one of the places. Groups are another great way to interact with a potential customer base or peers. And honestly, another great thing that is working very well for a lot of people, especially on the B2B side, are LinkedIn ads. But they're very tricky. They have to be very specific. So there's a lot of testing that goes back and forth with those. So we have some clients where that's working great, and we have other clients where that's not working so well. So the more narrow your niche and the more targeted your audience, the better. And honestly, sometimes it's just as simple as doing a search and reaching out to people, connecting one-on-one. I mean, we pretty much tell everybody everything all about us professionally in LinkedIn. So, if all of a sudden you want to talk to a certain group of people, you can certainly hunt down people that way. It's just time consuming, okay? All right, let me go to another question because I want to make sure we get to these. What are the reasons or thoughts for choosing a new tagline for your company if your current one is recognizable? Can it be done successfully to reach a new market? Okay. Couple things. One, keep in mind that about the time that you're so sick of your tagline that you want to cry every time you see it, your consumer group is probably just starting to recognize it, right? So that you think it's old and tired does not mean it's old and tired. You own the joint or you run the joint, so you are the worst person in terms of objectivity about that tagline. Number two, a lot of times if there's a lot of equity in a tagline, even if it's a crappy tagline, you should leave it alone. Because unless your company has changed so much that you don't do anything like what you used to do and the tagline is absolutely incorrect. If I walked up to people and I say, Timex takes a licking and, right. The last time Timex used that was in the late 70s. They have had several since. Anybody know what Timex's tagline is now? Okay. Huh? I think it's the time of your life, I think is what it is now. But the point is, they had $1 million tagline. I'm sure the people at Timex were so sick of it they could cry. But now we, and some of you are too young to have ever actually seen a commercial where Timex used that, and you still know it. So what happened in that case was they got a new chief marketing officer, wanted to put their mark on the company, and so they rebranded, right? So I don't know what the specifics are about this, but I would say wade into these waters very carefully and do not let your opinion be the deciding opinion. Get some outside expertise. Even if you only buy a couple hours of someone's time, get some outside expertise because you cannot see this objectively. And odds are it will cost you as much, if not more, to start over than it would to just keep doing what you're doing. All right? Another question from the floor? Yep.
So talk just a little bit about video, like YouTube. Do many people actually open up and watch a YouTube video if it's mailed to them?
Okay, the question is, talk a little bit about video. Do people actually open up videos and watch them? So a couple things about video. One, and this is true about anything that happens online, there's sort of, this sounds somehow shady, but it's just the reality. There are two reasons why you do anything online. One is for the audience, and the second one is for SEO. That's the reality. The #2 search engine in the world is YouTube. It's owned by the #1 search engine in the world, Google. So again, do you think it gets preferential treatment in search engine results? You bet it does. So even if no one ever watches your video, you probably should have some. Will they open it up? The real question is, does it suck? Because if it sucks, they're not going to open it up. If it looks boring, if it's just a talking head, or they'll open it up and they'll watch about a second and a half and go, oh, no. But if you have sent, or is it valuable to me? Does it teach me how to do something? Does it help me be better, faster, smarter? Then, okay, I'll watch it. Oh, and by the way, you have about a 2 or 3 minute window, and then I'm done. I don't care how fascinating it is, right? So the 7-minute video, the 10-minute video, break it up into pieces. Nothing wrong with having the whole thing because you're going to show that when you give presentations or you're going to put it on your website. But in terms of YouTube, chunk that up into pieces, into chapters, if you will. So yes, people will watch videos if they are of value to them. If I think you're just promoting and selling to me, then I'm not going to open that and watch it any more than I'm going to open the direct mail piece you sent to me, or I'm going to pay attention to what you put on Facebook, because you're not talking to me about me, you're talking to me about you. And we talked earlier, I don't care about you, right? Even if I'm your customer, the reality is, if you're not telling me something of value to me, even if I like you as a person, even if we hang out together and we go to ball games and we go out for a scotch now and then, if it's too much about you all the time, for no other reason than there's 24 hours in a day and I have 27 hours worth of work, and oh yeah, I have a family, and oh yeah, I have other stuff I want to do, people just have to filter out because of time. So yes, they'll open it, keep it short, keep it visually interesting, it is video. So again, a talking head for 2 minutes, painful beyond belief, right? I don't care how pretty the head is. And make it be clear in your email to me why I want to watch it. So don't just send me a video. Say, you know, Drew, if you give us 1 minute and 53 seconds, you are going to make $300,000 in the next week, whatever the promise is. Don't make that promise, by the way, but you know what I'm saying. So tell me why I want to watch it, but without a doubt, from an SEO perspective, you should be using video. Yep.
I just want to follow up on the thing about the video in YouTube. What's the best way then to link that to the website? Should it be actually that you post on YouTube first and then onto the website?
Great question. So the question is, if you're going to make a video, what's the best way to add it to your website? The best way is to let it live on YouTube, right? So you've got your YouTube channel where all your videos live, and then you're going to embed it into your, so don't give me a link and then I have to go to YouTube to find it. Embed it so I can click the play button and watch it, but it lives on YouTube because now you're getting both the traffic from your website and from YouTube, okay?
I guess a question about print media and how relevant it is nowadays. We get hit up constantly from different magazines, other publications saying, hey, put an ad in there, and it just seems really, really expensive and really question the viability of it and the worthwhileness of it.
Yeah, so the question is about print media in particular, magazines and newspapers. How relevant are they? They're expensive. The reality is, again, the overall marketing answer, it depends, right? So it depends on who your audience is. It depends on the publication. It is difficult to sell and justify advertising in a mainstream, broad publication that is not niched in any way today. Why? Because no one is talking to everyone anymore. So one of the challenges is to ask yourself is, how targeted is this magazine in terms of my audience? So for example, if you sell a certain kind of bridle or saddle, and it's a magazine that only goes to people who own horses, that may be a very good buy, especially when you combine it with, yeah, I will sign a contract and I will buy a series of ads, but I would also like an editorial story about my business. Oh, Mr. McClellan, we're so sorry, advertising and editorial never cross paths. Liar. Okay, here's what I would like to buy, right? So if the publication is very targeted and it goes exactly to who you want to talk to, it's a fine choice. If it is something like the Des Moines Register, which is very broad but has sections, then you have to be smarter about where you put your ad in that section, right? In the right section. And in most cases, the magazines have online alternatives which they can package with the print. So first of all, media, there's never been a better time to negotiate to buy media than it is right now, because they're all scrambling. I don't care if it's broadcast or print, to fill their stock of ads. Because everybody, of course, thinks that Facebook is the holy grail, and that's where we're spending all of our time, is online. So it is a great time to negotiate a great buy in print. If you can target it to the right people, it is still a very viable option. You just have to be really smart about the buy, and you have to be really smart about negotiating and get a lot of value add. And one of the value adds should be their online equivalent. But it is not dead yet. How many of you read at least one print magazine a month? Anybody? Yeah, almost everybody in the room. So it's not dead yet. I think they are reinventing themselves, without a doubt. I think both newspapers and magazines are doing that. But I don't think the industry is dead, nor do I think it's a bad choice, depending on what it is you sell. So, it can be a really great choice in the B2B space. Because again, those are usually, steel manufacturer magazine, pretty targeted audience. So if it's the right audience for you, it's a good buy. All right, let me get to what are the top 3 to 5 marketing initiatives you would recommend to a nonprofit organization? Well, first I would tell the nonprofit 3 to 5 may be a little aggressive. One of the basic marketing mistakes that everybody makes is we try and do everything. I think it was, to Christian's point earlier, we look at all these social media channels and we think we have to be on them all. You cannot, whether you're a for-profit or not-for-profit, you cannot do it all. You are far better to do fewer things and do them better and more often than you are to spread yourself out over everything. So for the generic nonprofit, the first thing I would do is I would step up how often I talk to people who have given us money or their time in the past. One of the other marketing mistakes we all make typically is we are always after the new customer or the new donor or the new volunteer. And we forget how valuable our existing customers or donors or volunteers are. And we forget how much easier and cheaper it is to get them to buy again as opposed to getting to someone to buy for the first time. So the first thing I would do is I would look at my donor base, my volunteer base, my supporters, my cheerleaders, and I would figure out how to connect them in a tighter, more emotional way to my cause, and how I would communicate to them more clearly and directly and often how they can help me. So a lot of nonprofits make the mistake of saying, here I'm going to hold up the sick puppy, don't you want to help? But they don't say, we need blankets. Animal Rescue League is brilliant at this. If you want to watch a nonprofit market very well, they go, we need blankets, we need canned dog food, and we need $25. Can you give us any of that? So I now know exactly what they need. So I would be very specific and I would talk to them more often. That would be tactic number 1. Tactic number 2 is I would become an incredible storyteller. Charities in the 80s and 90s were great at this, and as businesses started getting more persnickety about asking for facts and outcomes and all of that data, charities all of a sudden became numbers machines. And I'm not saying you don't want to share that information, because you do, but at the end of the day, I as a business owner, I'm going to give money to the charity that makes me cry a little, right? That I feel connected to emotionally. So you have to be a great storyteller. So every time you tell me a fact, tell me a story that makes that fact real to me. Every time you tell me a statistic, show me a picture of someone that that statistic represents. So put a face and a story to everything and everything you do. So if I go to your webpage, I should be overwhelmed with stories of the people that you help or the animals you help or the environment that you help. Doesn't matter what it is, but you need to make me feel why your charity matters. Number 3, I think you look at what you're already doing and you figure out how to do it better. So charities are notorious for doing things on their own on Publisher, which is really an evil, evil piece of software. So you need to look at what you're doing, and before you do anything new, you need to notch up the quality of what you're already doing, because odds are some of the other charities in town, some of the bigger charities in town, are kicking your butt. And if you want to compete with them, which you have to do for dollars, you need to be able to play at that level. And if you can do all of that and you still have time, then I would say I would look at the audience that you want to attract the most. So do you have a bunch of people in their 40s and 50s, but you haven't really appealed to the 20s and 30-year-olds? Or do the 20 and 30-year-olds love you, but it's hard to hang on to them as they get into their 40s and 50s? I would figure out what audience you have the biggest disconnect with that you think you could have a better connection with, and decide what medium, where their watering hole is, and create a marketing tactic that ties to that watering hole. Okay? Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I also work for a nonprofit. Social media is a big part of what we do.
No doubt.
Facebook specifically, we've
Yep.
got a large following. On our page, you now have to pay to promote.
If you want to promote.
The number of people we're reaching has decreased since this new initiative. How do you see that impacting people? Is it worth the money? Is it worth the time? We're very conscious of where every single dollar goes. So.
Sure. So Facebook just launched this new thing where on your Facebook page, you can pay a nominal fee to promote your page, which means they push it out to more people. I'm not sure it's a great idea for for-profit companies, because if I share something that feels like, oh, McClellan Marketing Group just shared this great tip and aren't they helpful? Oh, look, they paid to push this in my news feed. That tastes a little yucky, right? And the charity, of course, has the challenge of, if you can afford to pay to push that stuff in my news feed, then you don't need my money, right? So I would tread into that very slowly. I think the better way to get more people to see your stuff is to improve the quality of your stuff. So post more often, post things that get people to interact, ask more questions, do more polls, talk more about what they care about, to get more people interacting, because that's actually how Facebook decides how many people are going to see your stuff. Are people interacting with you? The more people that interact with you, the more people that see it. So I'd up it that way. If you decide you're going to do the sponsored push, then I would get someone to pay for that. And on your Facebook page, I would say, all of our sponsored posts are due to the graciousness and generosity of Bob Smith and his company, right? So I would do something to tell the consumer, hey, we're not taking the money you're donating and spending it on Facebook promotions.